Thank you for your patience, and it is starting at 7:18. Committee members are myself, Councilor DeSimone, and Vice President Jackson. This evening, we're going to be having a community input meeting regarding mobile homes and manufactured homes rent control board here in Attleboro. I wanted to let everybody know the timeline of what has occurred here in Attleboro. Councilor Reynolds introduced new business in mid-July regarding the city looking into creating a rent control board. In mid-December, the city solicitor did provide her opinion to this council. We reviewed the opinion on January 14th and called for this community input meeting for January 30th. At this time, we would like to hear from the community about creating a potential rent control board. Councilor Reynolds and myself are in the process of drafting a resolution that would go to the state, but we do want to hear from the community prior to doing that. And also, I wanted to just let everyone know, a lot of the letters and the information we've been receiving is asking the council to create rent control. That's not what this body is going to be doing, so I want to set the expectation. This body is going to potentially be asking for a rent control board that could potentially be looking at the rents in mobile parks. So we would never be setting a rent control. This body, that's not the function of the municipal council. So what would be happening is that we would be setting up a resolution that could potentially go to the state, and then it would come back to the community, and then a rent control board would be created. And at that point, it wouldn't be the municipal council that would be involved in that process. So I know that there's some set speakers. So, and again, I think it sounds like if there is one mobile park, there's a handful of people to speak for each of you, because right now there's over 100 people here. So it would be great to hear from all of you, but there is a clipboard going around to ask you to sign, so the council will receive that. The other thing I wanted to mention is that some counselors aren't here this evening. There's some conflict. The high school has mandatory orientation for freshmen, so I know that President Cooper and Councilor DeListio were not able to make it because of that. So with that being said, I would ask that the speakers come forward.
Good evening. Is this working?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. My name is Joe Feroce. I live at 1 Round Table Road in Sandcastle Estates, which is a manufactured home park in South Attleboro. Thank you, Councilor Holmes, for inviting us here tonight to give us a chance to express our opinion on rent stabilization or rent control, whatever it's going to be called, and to consider, establishing a rent control board in Attleboro for manufactured / mobile home parks only. So why are we here? What is the problem? So just a little bit of history. A year ago, Sandcastle was acquired by a national company / private investor company called Legacy Communities. And it's part of a national trend where these big companies, private equity companies, are buying up manufactured home parks all around the country to try to make as much money as possible so that they can satisfy their investors. Their intention is to make a lot of money. It's not really to run great mobile home parks. And they're looking at ways that they can increase the rents. Now at Sandcastle, a bit of a unique situation. We have 172 homes. 100 of those homes were, at the time, had expired leases because the previous owner had not renewed the leases when they came due. So Legacy thought, well, this is a wonderful opportunity. We can up the rent on all of these 100 residents immediately, and they did that. In mid-April, they sent out new bills to these 100 residents, raising their rents anywhere from $40 to $125, with the next rent due in 2 weeks later, May 1st. So that's about a 10 to 30% increase in the rents due immediately, due within 2 weeks, not even 30 days notice. Those same 100 residents also got another rent increase in January for with a 5% increase on their base rent plus a property tax surcharge. So all in all, there are some residents whose rent in last April was $400, and in January 2020, it's $588, a 47% increase in 9 months for some of those residents. And many of the others. Now, for the rest of the people, besides those 100, they did get a rent increase in January, February, a slightly smaller than 5%, but plus a property tax surcharge. So a net increase of around 10 to 12% for everybody else. So we've got, at minimum, 10% increase where, and up to 47%. Now, in the past, the most anybody ever got as a rent increase in Sandcastle was the normal rent increases were 1 to 3%. They were always the CPI, just based on CPI. So these residents are used to $5 increases, $7 increases, maybe $12. I think a couple of years it might have been $15. Nothing like 40 or 125 or 60 that we've already seen hit us. So what did we do? We did a few things. First of all, a few of us got together and decided to write a petition and go around and get signatures to send to the city council to get support to establish a rent control board. So in Sandcastle, we got about 160 odd signatures. I have the names here. We also reached out to Liberty Estates and to Oak Hill Park, the other two largest mobile home parks in the city, and they also got signatures. And I think altogether we have I think 400 or maybe a little bit over 400 signatures in support of it. So what else did we do? We also reached out to, as you know, the city councilors. You know, we went immediately to Sarah, who's our Ward 1 counselor, who immediately expressed her support and said she was going to help us get this through. And over the course of the few months, we've reached out to Ty and of course Diana and several of the other counselors. If you haven't been inundated, then you don't know what you missed. And then we also have elicited support from our state rep, Jim Hawkins, and legislative assistant Tara Major. We also spoke to the mayor. So we've been, going around trying to gather as much support as we could. So and then another thing that happened in October at Sandcastle, we have our annual election, and the residents elected an entirely new homeowners association board with 11 members. All 11 members were people who had signed the petition. Okay, the previous board wasn't totally in favor, but the residents did elect a brand new board. And so, I don't want to take up too much time, so I just want to say that we need your help. The only way to keep these rents stabilized and or reduced is through a rent control board. So we really do seek your help to get this through. And thank you very much for offering us this opportunity.
Have any questions?
I thought he did a really good job.
Kathleen? Oh.
Do you know, going forward, have they said anything about future increases, or how are
They
the
have
terms of the leases?
they have said up to 5% per year.
For everybody?
Okay. For everybody. That's what they've said. Well, some people. Oh, for 5 years. Yeah, sorry, for 5 years.
Up to 5%
right.
a year for 5 years, or
5%
total?
a year for 5 years. And at that rate, our 588 is going to be up way up into the 700s by then.
Does that, what about the property tax? That does not include that?
Not including the property tax, because we're expecting to get a bigger hit on the property tax surcharge in the future as well. Ty?
Would you say that the vast majority of people are on fixed income, be it Social Security or whatever? And what is the age when you can first begin and when you can move in?
Oh, it's a 55, our community is a 55 and over. Liberty Estates is a 55 and over. Oak Hill doesn't have, Oak Hill is a family park. We might even have people from Birchwood. We have a couple from Birchwood. I think then that's also a family park, but many, many seniors in the park, right? As well as, yes.
How long have people, in general, what's the average, how long have people resided in Sandcastles? Do you have any idea?
Forever.
So,
Well, what I mean to say is, when people move to Sandcastle, they expect to live there the rest of their lives. You know, it's really, it's not a family park, but we have become family. We have a lot of social functions. Everybody makes friends with everybody else, and so it's tough because now people. And you asked about fixed income. One of the issues is that, say you've got a married couple with 2 Social Securities and maybe a pension. One of the spouses passes away. Their income is now a lot lower. So having a lower income and then facing higher rents all the time it's too much. So
one more question. What happened with the right of first refusal?
the price was too high. How many owners? They offered 4 times what the previous owner had paid for it. So the price was too expensive. We couldn't have gotten the mortgage for the amount, for $13.3 million. Wouldn't have worked.
Was there a lot of support for that, though?
We voted for it.
Yeah, okay.
We voted for it, yes. Overwhelmingly, right, Joyce? It was overwhelmingly to try to turn it into a resident-owned community, but we literally couldn't afford the mortgage because their price was significantly higher than we think significantly higher than market value. So.
May I, from the chair, go to, yeah. When they came in, Legacy came in to buy it, it was assessed at $3 million. And these people, I believe, tried to get a loan for $10 million maybe, because that's what they wanted, and then Legacy offered 13. So it just it knocked out any ownership by the people that lived there at all. So it went way past what it was assessed at, which again is a problem that we should address here in another way in the city. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Diana.
Who's next? Can I just give an example? One example. Social Security.
Hold on one second. If it looks like you're about to speak, if you'd like to speak after her, you have to come to the podium because we can't hear. Like they're not going to. But if you'd like to, right after her, would you like to? Okay.
I think so.
Of course.
Hi, my name's Barbara Craw, and I live at the hometown Oak Hill Park on 100 Shanley Drive. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. And I'm speaking on behalf of our family park, which is about, I would say, 50-50 retirees on fixed income and then 50% families. In my instance, I'm a single parent on a fixed income, and I choose to move to Oak Hill because I couldn't afford to buy a regular home in the city of Attleboro. I was born and raised in the city of Attleboro. I've served my community on school committee. I'm very proud of the city I live in. When I moved in, I didn't expect them to constantly be raising the rent every year because the prior owner wouldn't raise it sometimes or do a very low increase in rent, where the rent here every year it's raised. I've seen my neighbors elderly have to walk away and leave their homes, sell at less than what they owed, so depleting all their savings, all their retirement, because if you leave the park and you don't sell the home, you're still responsible for the lot rent. So if you go someplace else, you still have to come up with either a mortgage payment or a rent in an apartment or in some elderly type housing. So they couldn't afford all of that. And I have a mortgage on my home. I pay a lot rent. I pay more than my niece does for a regular home in the city of Attleboro with her taxes. So at that point, I'm in a mobile home park that's supposed to be for a moderate to lower income setting, and at some point they're gonna force me out where I'm gonna lose everything that I've put into my home. I have rent letters here, which I tried to investigate, where they say there's fees they were charging us. I think we need a check and balance system, and that's one of my big points for a rent control board, because they raise our rent and we get no information as to why. Why are you going up all this money, or what's this increase for? The only letters I've gotten since I've been there show that my base lot rent, the municipal fee of $12, and then an increase of what supposedly goes to the owners. But when I looked into it, the municipal fee hasn't gone up in a long time. So the day one you pay your lot rent, that $12 was built in. So then the next year I get a letter and they're increasing in another $12. So did the municipal fee go up now to $24? And the following year, did it go up to $36? Did it go up to $48? Because every year they're charging me an additional $12 for this municipal fee, which they're telling us is the city licensing fee. So without a rent control board, they're able to charge us all these fees, and we don't have like anyone to say, okay, is this right or is this wrong? Where does this go? They've taken away amenities. We used to have a laundromat. They've taken that away, saved money, but yet our rent still went up, and there's no justification for it. We've had part-time managers. At one point we didn't have a manager, we didn't have a maintenance person. They were saving money there. So even one winter they plowed twice because residents have counted. They never sanded, never put down ice melt. So you save money that year, but yet the rent still went up again, the full amount. So there's no one to check as to how this company is coming to figures to raise our rent every single year. They put in a new septic system, but there was a trust left by Bob Cassidy, who owned the park prior, which was, my understanding, was over $1 million. We were told that the project came in under budget and under the time limit, but yet now they're saying, oh, you're still paying for it. We could increase your rent even more to pay for it. How can you double charge us for something where there was already a trust to pay for that? And then our biggest fear, too, a lot of us, is with the new high school being built, the taxes that the park will have to, incur, which is fine, but how much are they going to be able to put back on us and just say, well, we're going to raise your rent $100, $150, and we have no way to look into it to say why, because we get no itemization. There's no one to double check on these things. And again, I have a mortgage. I can't just walk away and leave to say that, oh, I've had it. I've been there, like I said, 13 years. It's my home. Everything I put into it, the lot rents are so high, no one wants to move into the park and pay a lot rent and have a mortgage, because we do own the home. So people are like, it's cheaper for me, again, to buy a regular house or to rent and save some money and buy a regular house. So I'm kind of trapped. And when these corporations come in and think of us as a product instead of people, you're stuck. So what's happening is people are just dropping their keys on Hometown's desk saying, I have to walk away, and then they can come in at like a market value below anything you've ever put into your house and like take your home away, and yet you've lost everything you've put into it. So I went around with a couple other people from my park, and we got 145 signatures in favor of rent control. There's approximately, I went under 180 homes there. Not all of them are occupied. Some are vacant. Some people we couldn't connect with them. But I only had actually 2 people who just said, well, I don't want to get involved because they're afraid of retaliation. Everyone else signed that petition. So we would like to see a rent control board so that things, like, again, a check and balance, and that we're treated like people who live there, not just a product to make money off of, because right now there is no way for anyone to say, okay, what is a fair profit that you should make? What have you given us in return for raising our rent? Did the city municipal fee increase that much? $12 every year for 13 years that I'm paying that now, which from what I looked into, it didn't. It's been pretty much $12 steady through. But so how can you keep charging me and break it down, which I can provide copies of my lease thing saying that I have to pay an additional $12 every month, every year, when it didn't increase? So who oversees that? Who will be a voice for us? Because right now we have no voice. So we're just asking that you can help us out here again so people don't have to walk away. And it's a good alternative, like I said, too, for families, single parents, or even 2 incomes that they just don't have enough money to afford a home or a place with a yard. That was one of my biggest things, too. I wanted a yard for my son to play in, so I rent the land, but I couldn't in an apartment on a 3rd floor. When we moved from a 3rd floor apartment, he had no yard to play in. So that's kind of what we face at Oak Hill. So we're asking you to help us out and look at that as individuals and as people, and not just a product that somebody wants a big company to make an unlimited amount of profit off of. Okay.
Good evening.
Excuse me, just one quick.
Yes.
Always stay at the podium because there may be questions, and if you have any information that you'd like us to take, we certainly can to make copies for the full council as well.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Walter Thibodeau. I live at 8 Liberty Drive in Liberty Estates, South Attleboro. I want to give you a little rundown on my life and what brought me to the mobile home that I have now and have lived in for approximately 15 years. I've owned my own houses since 1969 when I bought my first house. I owned 4 houses on my own in my lifetime. So now I own a mobile home. 1994, I got an injury on the job. Was told by the doctors that I couldn't work anymore. So I went on workman's comp, fought with them, went through the ridiculous kind of intimidation that they put someone who goes on workman's comp through, where I was hassled to go see a different doctor almost every week. Finally was accepted for Social Security benefits because of my injury and my other ailments as an older person. Because of all of that, I lost the last home that I owned, had to file bankruptcy, and lost everything that I had worked for all my life. I lived in apartments, myself and my ex-wife and I and the kids lived in apartments for about 7 years, until I finally had the opportunity to purchase a mobile home. I had worked and worked and worked to get my credit back again during that period of time. So for more than 7 years, we lived in apartments until we found a bank, Mechanics Bank in, I believe I think it's in Taunton, or I forget exactly where the location is now. But that's when we purchased a mobile home in Liberty Estates. And as I say, for about 15 years now, the rents have stayed consistent with the income level. Being on Social Security, if we didn't get an increase, if the federal government decided that we didn't need an increase in our Social Security, we didn't get a rent increase. The people who own it have been very good, for the most part, to myself and other residents. However, what scares us to death is that what happened to Sandcastle could happen to us. And we have about 130 units, between 120 and 130 units in Liberty Estates. And we were able to collect 61 signatures from people who were either afraid to answer their doors because they are at the point they're so elderly and disabled, they're afraid to go to the door and be vulnerable, or people would tell us that they couldn't sign anything because they were afraid of retaliation, because they knew this was going to be submitted. They didn't want to write down their name and their address. That's the kind of thing that happens in a mobile home park. As Joe was saying before me, when you move into a mobile home or a manufactured park, you expect to live there for the rest of your life. I've had, in the 15 years that I've lived where I've lived, I've had several people around me who have died, either through illness or through just natural causes. But that's what we all expect when we move in, is that that's probably the last place we'll ever go. With this, without having a rent control board, I don't think any of us realized how vulnerable we were if someone came in and paid a lot more money than we would be able to provide ourselves for that first option to buy, which is in the state law, that if somebody wants to buy the mobile home park, we as residents have that first opportunity to buy it. However, as we can see from the lesson we've learned at Sandcastle, if a corporation comes in, the carpetbaggers, as I call them, that come in from out of state who could care less about any of us residents in Attleboro or even the city of Attleboro, all they care about is making money. And it's a different situation for us who are living there. We're under that direct threat at all times. And we really need the city council and the mayor and the legislature to get behind us and make sure that we no longer have that threat above us and right there staring us in the face all the time, so that we can live the rest of our lives out in relatively peace. If there are any questions, yes.
Mr. Thibodeau, I don't know you, but I know of your reputation on this body, and you're a credible, reputable person. And I should say that my mother lives in a mobile park in Rhode Island, and she's in this situation right now. They were able to purchase the park, so the residents are purchasing. But I want to play devil's advocate, because I have these voices in my head, and I know that other people are going to be thinking and or saying the same thing. We live in a capitalist society. Mm-hmm. This is a business. You've been in business, you worked. What's the argument that we can control this investment from these people? They bought a property, they're a landlord. I guess, what distinguishes your situation from anybody else living in an apartment in the city who's subject to rate increasing and landlords who are unreasonable, which happens a lot?
The difference is we purchase our own homes. We lease the land. That's the difference. You live in an apartment, you're paying a rent for the apartment you're living in. You don't own any of the property. Mm-hmm. You own your personal items inside, but you don't own the property. So you don't have anything vested in that except whatever you had to put down as for your first month's rent and something for a security deposit. That's all you have vested in that property. But for someone like me and the other folks that are in the same situation, you've either already paid for your mobile home or you're paying for your mobile home. And even though it's called a mobile home or a manufactured home, you really just can't move it without damaging it. They're not built that way, especially the double wides. They're just not built that way. They come and install them in pieces, reassemble them. So the difference between us in mobile homes or manufactured homes is we own our homes. We don't rent our homes. We rent the property, and we pay for the services that come along with the maintenance of that property. So the whole park is private property. So part of our rent goes to plow the streets. Part of our rent goes to pay for our water and our sewer. Part of our rent goes to maintain the roads, fix the roads. Anything that needs to be done for maintenance, we pay for that on our rent. That's the difference. Plus we pay, as was previously stated, $12 every month that goes to the city for the permit. You may know already that a mobile home park does not have a license to operate. It has a permit. The permit is issued by the health department. And that $12 goes to the city health department every month out of every one of our monthly rent payments. Any other questions?
Will rent control keep anybody from the people who own it from selling their places if they own the park?
We can't hear you unless you're at the podium. So it's probably one at a time, or it's one at a time at the podium because we can't hear you.
I was asking a question. Do you want me to go up there to ask the question?
Well, this isn't a question and answer, sir. That's okay. If you have a question for the council, though, you can come forward. But this is mostly an input meeting, so we can't. The camera can't hear you because the microphone's not near you.
Thank you very much for your
thank
time
you.
tonight. Appreciate it.
Good evening.
Good evening, Tom.
I'm going to put my cheaters on here so I can see my notes. First of all, I'd like to thank the councilors for allowing us to present our position of stabilizing our rent. It's not rent control, it's stabilizing our rent. I'm a retired police officer in the city of Attleboro, over 30 years on. I'm also a veteran of the Vietnam War, who was injured over in Vietnam. I came back, and I love this country, I love this city, so I stayed on another 20-something years in the military reserves as a Marine and I was in the Air Force. I know the statutes backwards and forwards. That's what I was trained for over 30 years, how to read them and read the laws. I spent 2 days reading the Attorney General's laws, so I know them. But that's not why I'm here today. A few weeks ago, on a cold, rainy Saturday morning, myself and ladies and gentlemen went out and got signatures for people who want to have their rent stabilized. And I told them, this is your legal right, to speak up and talk, because otherwise there's no boundaries of what they can add on. If they want to add on that next month to $100, they can. There's no law stopping them. But anyway, let me get back to what I was saying. As I entered some of the homes, I was taken back. I was in shock. It was like deja vu. It was like I was in a time warp. I find myself, I saw furniture just like I had when I was a kid in the late 60s in the homes, some of the homes I went into. And one of the chairs reminded me so much of the chair I had. It was an old chair. It was a rocker, but the handles, how the arms have chairs today. But back then they had big things. You could rest your whole arm and everything else. That's what they had, excuse me. And I talked to them, and I looked around, and I saw older chairs, and I saw appliances that were old. They don't even make some of the stuff. They were yellow stoves and refrigerators and so forth and so on. The flooring was old. They had old cars in the driveway, not brand new cars. I sense, being a police officer, I can really read up a situation real fast and real quick. And what I felt, and I could tell the older people visibly shaken. They were in fear, deep fear. They were in fear. They asked me, what am I going to do if they have to rent another $200? Where am I going to go? I said, I wish I had an answer for you. I don't. I know it's not right, but that's why we're trying to get stabilization of our rent, so we can stabilize and have a normal life and know what we're going to do. And it broke my heart to see that. We shouldn't have that in society today. Thank you.
It's helpful if you say your name and address as well.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Name?
Tom
Tommy.
O'Brien.
Mr. O'Brien, where do you live? What part?
Sandcastle.
Sandcastle? Thank you, sir.
One-time resident of Attleboro. Brought here when I was a kid. So.
Thank you.
I'm Jim Hawkins, 485 Locust Street. A quick answer to Councilor DeSimone. I think there's a difference in the category of real estate that a big company might buy. This is not like commercial real estate. If I see somebody paying giant prices for a lot of land where they could put a store on Route 1, that's a lot different than a lot of land where somebody owns the property on it and can't move because it went up. You think about somebody who's, I've mostly been working with Sandcastle, so I think about senior citizens. This is probably would have been a pretty smart way to downsize. Don't have kids anymore, don't need a big house anymore, facing retirement on a fixed income when costs are going to go up. This would be a pretty logical way to deal with that and stay there forever. And you could own the mobile home, and who would think that the rent on a postage stamp size lot of land would be the thing that would kick you out? Who would have ever thought that? A generation ago, who would have thought that? But this is where the problem comes from. These people have no normal protection from the law. Like you would if you owned your own home, you would have some protections if things happen, but they don't own the land that the home is on. And it's not like if you're in an apartment, you could just move. They're not like campers. You could just pick them up and put them someplace else. They're committed to that. They're in a very vulnerable situation on a fixed income. I think Joe mentioned some of the people that live there are maybe on a $1,500 a month Social Security check, and when they moved there, they had 2 checks and one of the partners has passed away. They're in a very vulnerable situation. My role in this is not to tell the city what to do. I'm the state rep, so I would be the next person to deal with this once you decide what you want to do. I've provided some help to the people from Sandcastle because we've done a lot of these at the State House, and I had access to legal services to make sure that this was being done the right way. This is not a new situation for us in the legislature. So if you were to decide on what you want to do, I would be the next person, and it would go through the House and then through the Senate, and then the governor would sign it, and that would be my job to see that that's done quickly and efficiently. It's also an issue, not at the state level, but at the federal issue. I brought a letter from Senator Warren's office about this, because this is a national situation where big corporations can come in and they see valuable real estate like in Attleboro, like in South Attleboro, which is changing so quickly, and these people are very vulnerable. They need some protection. So I'll read what she said. She describes the situation probably a little more eloquently than I might, so I'll just read the letter. I gave you a copy. I didn't realize there was going to be 100 people here. I might have made copies for everybody, so I apologize for that. Over the last several years, big Wall Street investment firms have bought companies and communities all across the country, and the results have not been pretty. Giant retailers like Toys R Us, Sears, Payless, and Gymboree have been gobbled up, looted, sold for their parts, and shuttered, leaving workers and communities to pick up the pieces. But it's not just retail that's affected. Private equity firms are some of the largest landlords in the country, own the second largest nursing home chain in America, and manufacture and service voting machines that 90% of voters use. Altogether, private equity firms own 35,000 companies in all kinds of industries and employ nearly 8.8 million workers. Here's how their business works. Private equity firms raise some money from investors to buy companies. And here's where the problem comes for Sandcastle. The residents were limited to what a bank would appraise the value for. These people were not. They could pay, $3 million over the assessed value, over what the property was worth, because they're not using typical owner financing to buy this. So they buy these companies promising to sell them at a profit in 3 to 5 years. They match that money with money that they borrow and go on a shopping spree. But unlike working families who borrow money to buy a home or go to school, the private equity firms do not pay back the debt. They transfer that responsibility to the companies they buy. They generate short-term profits by forcing companies to jack up the prices, lay off workers, sell assets, slash services, ignoring the long-term health of the companies they own, their workers, customers, and communities. Manufactured homes provide a critical avenue for home ownership for millions of working families in Massachusetts and around the country, particularly those low-income and rural communities where there are few affordable options. Private equity firms have been sucking up manufactured housing communities here in Massachusetts and around the country because they know they can make a quick buck by jacking up rents and cutting maintenance and other services. And there's little that residents can do to stop them. The city of Attleboro's community is just one of the 680,000 home sites across the nation at the mercy of these giant Wall Street firms. Situations like the one in your community, Attleboro, are why I've introduced the Stop Wall Street Looting Act to reform private equity industry from top to bottom. This legislation would protect communities by closing the legal, tax, and regulatory loopholes that allow private equity firms to capture the returns of their investments while insulating themselves from the risks. Among other things, my bill would require private investment funds to have skin in the game by sharing responsibility for the liabilities of the companies in their control. That means if the property management companies they own violate housing codes or workers' rights, the private equity firms can be sued. Any business model that requires squeezing residents of communities like yours to make a profit is a business model in need of reform. I will continue to fight for the big structural change we need to protect communities in Massachusetts and across the country. So we have legislation pending in the State House that would protect people that live in manufactured homes. There's legislation pending at the federal level. It's known as an issue, but this is an issue that's happening right now. Sandcastle was just purchased a couple of years ago. Oak Hill was just purchased. There's others that are at risk of being purchased because real estate values are going up so quickly in Attleboro. So if you can enact some sort of protection, this doesn't mean, I wish it didn't keep going back to the word rent control, because it's not rent control, it's stabilization. It would just simply ensure fairness for the people who live in these parks. If you can do this now, I will do my job to get it through as quickly as I can through the legislature.
Thank you. Thank you. So I know it seems like that's not the proper term anymore, but that is, it's called.
Oh, I know. It's hard not to say that.
Well, it's part of, we're looking at creating a rent control board.
I know.
That
The name
wording
connotes
will
something that
change, but-
happened a couple generations ago
Yeah.
that wasn't so pretty, and that's
Yes.
not what this is.
So, if the council does vote for the resolution.
Yes.
What happens at the state level? Can you walk
Sure.
us through that process?
Sure,
please?
I would walk it up to the clerk where I register it as a bill, as a home rule petition, which is different than normal legislation. It doesn't go in the normal cycle every 2 years, has to be reintroduced. It doesn't take 2 years to go through, but I can introduce it any time that you do it. House counsel, who is already aware of this and already has seen what you're working on, they would see it next to make sure that it's legal, and then it would go from there probably to the housing committee, who would approve it. Then it would go to municipalities and communities committee to approve it. It would go through third reading where they make sure that it's written properly, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and then it would be voted on in informal session. An informal session happens 12 months out of the year. We don't have to be there. Anything that's controversial, if somebody doesn't like it, they could show up at informal session and squash it. But normally these aren't the things that have it, they're not controversial. So it would go through the same process again in the Senate. So I would enlist Senator Feeney to watch it to make sure that it continues there, and Senator Roush to make sure that it continues there, that it doesn't get stalled anywhere there. And then the governor does the same thing. He'll do a legal review and he'll sign it.
Okay.
So I can't put a timeline.
Okay.
But it depends on how critical it is. I did one for the city when you had to change polling locations, and it happened in a few weeks.
Okay.
The one that Councilor Dolan is working on for gender doesn't really affect anything, and that's been probably closer to a year. So it depends. This would probably go through quicker because they know that people's situations are depending on it.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
First of all, Representative Hawkins, thank you for coming out here, and thank you for finding or talking to Senator Warren. So my question is, can you talk about in other communities in Massachusetts how effective these sort of rent control boards have been, and what they do and what all is involved with
They're
that?
very similar. I think there's something like 25 other communities that already have it. They're very similar. And it doesn't change. The people still own and make a profit on the parks,
Mm-hmm.
and the residents still pay rent, and they still pay increases. There's just somebody to assure that it's fair and equitable.
And have they been effective in?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. I'm next on.
Ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, thank you for letting me come tonight. My name is Sandy Overlock, and I live in Wheel Estates Mobile Home Park in North Adams, Mass. We've had rent control since 1982. When legislature wrote this bill years ago, for lack of a better word, they called it rent control. But as everybody has said, it's really not rent control. I've been involved in mobile home issues since 1982, and I'm president of the Manufactured Home Federation of Massachusetts. We're a nonprofit volunteer organization. I also am vice president of the National Mobile Home Federation. And over the years, I've seen these big corporations coming into Massachusetts, buying up mom and pop communities. It's slowly coming across. It started out the west, and it's slowly coming across the whole country, and these big conglomerates come in. And we all bought our manufactured homes because it was affordable low-income housing. What no one saw was these big corporations coming into our state and buying our communities and hiking the rents, so it's no longer affordable low-income housing. Frank Rolfs is a huge conglomerate of these corporations, and he has what he calls the Mobile Home University, and you can Google it and you can see. He has videos on there where he's stated that they can't move their homes, so you can charge as much as you want. They don't pay their rent, so you just take the home and recycle it with another person. And standing at a podium in a room full of these park owners, he says you have them held hostage and you can charge them whatever you want for rent. And what are they going to do? They can't take their homes and move them. They aren't mobile, even though they're called mobile. They are no longer mobile once they're there. And that's the attitude of these corporations. And we're losing manufactured homes, and we're losing people because of it. Rent boards are not controlling, they just didn't have the terminology back in the 70s. It's not controlling, it's just making it fair for the residents and the owners. The Attorney General's Office and the Department of Housing and Community Development have been looking into manufactured housing as low-income affordable housing, because as you know, there's a lack of affordable housing in this state, and they are trying to use that to create more affordable housing. It's the only way low-income families can live and have a home. The rent boards is giving the elderly that lives that the community is in a fighting chance to survive. It's a level playing field for the residents. The owners can get rent increases if they're honest. If they are upfront and not trying to gouge the residents, they shouldn't be afraid of a rent board looking into their finances. The rent evaluation is giving the residents another set of eyes that are professional to look at these expenses of these communities and justify the increases. Right now, there's nobody that looks at these finances of these corporations, and they can charge anything they want. A lot of them commingle their expenses with the other communities that they own in the states and other states. And without overseer looking at this, there's no way anybody knows that these expenses are being commingled, or are they for that company? Are they doing what they say they're putting their money for? You don't know that. Nobody knows that, and they just keep hiking the rents and hiking the rents. It's just going to give a board. I live in a rent control community. We have a board of 5 members that was appointed by our mayor, who from the community of business people. They know we have accountants, we have lawyers, we had a police officer, we have had different people on our board over the years. And they're able to look at these, and there's a formula. I brought a petition that our city council uses to figure it out, and it's been fair throughout all these years. I've lived in my community for 42 years, and we've had 3 owners, the original in the 60s and 2 since then. In 2013, we bought our community. And you can see the difference in the expenses when you own it and compared. And I realize the owners, they have to get a profit. But how much of a profit are you? They're looking at, 100, 200, 300% profit on their increases to these people. I get calls all the time from residents in communities that are elderly, and they're afraid of retaliation, and they do get retaliated. It's against the law, but people are afraid to file complaints because the more they complain, the more they're retaliated. And I can't tell you how many calls I get on a weekly basis. The residents of Sandcastle wanted to purchase their park, and it's not their fault that Legacy came in and offered 2 times what the asking price was. This is what they do. They come across the state. They found Massachusetts now, and they think they can come into Massachusetts and push the government around, and you're going to do what they want. And somebody has to say enough is enough at some point in time and call an end to it and protect our elderly. I had a call about 20 years ago from an elderly woman. Her and her husband were in their 80s, and their park had been owned by a mom and pop, and they were old, didn't have family, so they sold it to this big corporation. Well, there are rules, and there's the 940 and the 140 protecting residents. These people had a motor home in their driveway that the owner let them keep there. Everybody was. Mr. Big Corporation came in and said, you have to get it out. They said, no, it's grandfathered, we don't. He said, I'm taking you to court. He did. He took them to court. 2 years of fighting and $15,000 of their hard savings for the judge to finally say, Mr. Owner, you are wrong. They can keep their home, their motor home in that driveway. The wife called me a couple of months later and said, I just wanted to let you know that my husband passed away. He couldn't take the stress of all of this. This was just over a motor home. What's going to happen when these people are out of their homes and they don't have a place to live, and the towns and the cities and the state has no affordable housing for them to go to? How many people are going to be misplaced pass away and not have a home before we finally do something to get some sort of peace of mind for these residents. They call me and they say, I just want to live here for the rest of my life in peace. This is what I planned on doing when I bought this. I've downsized, my family has grown, and I didn't need the big house anymore. And I just want to live my life in peace. And I hear it a lot. I just ask you to please consider approving rent control for the city of Attleboro to protect all of these people, mostly elderly, and the young families, because they can't afford to buy housing either, and just give them some kind of protection. The owners will get increases. Our owners did. It's worked in our city since 1982 when we got it, and we finally were able to purchase our community in 2013. So I have the copy of the petition, and this is a copy of the
Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Good, but you did a
Thank
great
you.
job.
Thank you. No questions.
Yeah, thank you. You did a
You're
great job.
welcome.
My leg fell asleep. My name is Rodney Berge. I live in the Sandcastle, 10 Merlin Drive, Unit 272. And that's kind of important. I was one of the four amigos when they first raised the rents at Sandcastle. And we were shocked when they went up an average of 20%. When most of us moved into Sandcastle, we were told that we would get a rent increase of a CPI or CPI plus 2. The first rent increase averaged 20% across the board. And many people that live there in my street, we average close to 80 years old. I'm one of the younger ones at 78. And quite frankly, it shocked me. So we went around and do a rent control petition. And I have to admit, has anybody been in the Sandcastle? Have you ever been there? Yeah. It's a very nice looking park. It really is. But I was fortunate or misfortunate enough to go to 70 homes. And I walked out crying. There were people that said to me, I'm losing my home. What do I do? I had no answer for them, none whatsoever. In January, they went up another $62, another 12%. We had a coffee hour just last Saturday. Two of them walked to me and I said, I no longer can afford my home. I have to leave. Now, unfortunately, there is nothing we can do. We tried to negotiate. Our previous board did a good job. Their lease came in, and I have a copy if you'd like to have it. But it states at first it was going to go 8% per year. And they did it down to 5%. But also, it also says they're going to raise if the taxes go up, if the water goes up, if the sewer goes up, if our license goes up, if our insurance goes up, they're going to add another line item on it. It's going to be the basis plus all of these other things. Now, right now the rent is $588. I have a copy of the rent, March of 2019, $419. All of a sudden, in May of 2019, $526. In January 1st of 2020, $588. Now, I have a list right here. If they do not raise any other rents whatsoever, in 6 years, it's going to be $770, and we know there's going to be another $30. Right now, half that park is low income. They will no longer be there. These are senior citizens that need your help. Nobody else can help them. We can't do anything. In fact, The manufacturing housing community law, right here, protects mobile home tenants, but they do not in any way, shape, or form protect rent control. Let me just read in this thing. It says, the amount of rent increase generally are at the discretion of your community owner. And the second line is tenant at will. Now this is what everybody in this park will be, a tenant at will. If you are a tenant at will, your community owner operator may rent increase at any time in any amount they want. I'm here to beg for your help. We can't stop them. There is only one group of people that can stop them, and that is the city council control. That's it. Nobody else can do it. Only you. I stand in front of you begging you to please pass this. I do not want to see my neighbors driven out, and they're being driven out right now. But within 5 years, they won't be there anymore. They will be asking you where to move because they don't have a place. They sold what little money they had, bought that home, and as you asked, what's the difference? They own the home, the park doesn't. They rent the property, but they take care of it. The owner doesn't have to do that. And by Massachusetts law, they can keep raising the rent and raising the rent. As has happened in many places, they take their keys out, they walk up to the office and say, I can't afford it anymore. Is that what you want to see happen? I don't. I happen to be a person been in this business for 30 plus years. I owned a mobile home park. And to me, they were my neighbors, and they were my friends. These people come from out of state, and they don't really care. But I know one thing. I was reared down south for many, many a year. And you went down in a certain area, and you did not fool around with they call them chillin' in their old folks. They were called rednecks. I came up here in New England, and there's a group of people just like that. They're from New England. They call themselves swamp Yankees. I appeal to a part of swamp Yankee in you to turn around and tell those people, no, you're not going to come in here and throw these people out. You can do it. I beg you for it. Please help us.
Sir, two questions, if I may. You mentioned that 50% of the owners are low income. Is that anecdotal? Or how do you know that?
No, they tell me.
Okay, that's based on what they say.
They wanted, the first few houses I went into is I make $17,000 a year. And immediately they just raised my rent $1,800. I have about $60 left after everything. My rent went up $107. What the hell do I do? Now, personally, I don't know. I said, all I'm trying to do is start something. These people are scared.
Has I'm sorry, sir. Has Legacy indicated at all a willingness to make adjustments based upon income level? Has that discussion happened?
No, they can't do that.
Okay,
that's illegal. Can't do it.
Okay.
They did make an adjustment already. They originally said 8%, 8%, and they went down to 5%. But 5% in the same time in the lease says, next line item, property taxes. Next line item is whatever it is. Next line item. And then capital improvement. And capital improvement, if you read the book, and even in their lease says anything over $100. My God, that's nothing. And they can raise, and they can do whatever they want to. The state, anybody else can't do anything about it. They decide to do something, we're going to pay for it. Now, Rent Control Board, or rent stabilization, they have to come in front of you. And if they have something that need to be done, and you look at it and say, that's fair, raise the rent. You allow that to happen. You allow them to make a profit. I have a listing here what it costs being a mobile home park owner before and what it costs today. It's not that much. They're making hundreds of dollars per unit. And my unit pays well over $300 a month. And they're going to raise that several $100s over the next so many years. That's why I tell you my unit is $272. We're not Rodney Berge. I'm unit 272. I'm a profit center. And that's what we all considered, profit centers. Big corporations do that. I'm asking you and I'm begging you, protect my neighbors. Protect the senior citizens, because they can't do it. Only you can. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Bertos. I live at 24 Streeter Lane in Attleboro, and I'm reading a letter from the Attleboro Council on Human Rights, which I'm on. Dear councilors, the Attleboro Council on Human Rights voted unanimously to support the effort to create a rent control board for manufactured or mobile home parks. Manufactured home parks are an important component of our housing market because they provide a critical avenue to affordable home ownership. They are one of the few affordable housing options, partly because they can cost half that of a traditional site-built home. There are two types of residents who buy these parks. First, are residents who are 55 and older who are looking to downsize so they can continue to live in security and dignity on limited incomes. Second are families who are trying to afford their first home. These two groups provide a captive customer base with few options due to their lack of economic mobility. This opens the door for companies to buy parks and dramatically increase rents to quickly increase profits. While we believe mobile home park owners have every right to run their parks and make a profit, we do not believe that excess profit should be at an amount to cause folks to be priced out of their homes. The homes are bought and sold in the parks they live in, and they lease the land their homes are on. Zoning laws do not permit random units on separate plots of land, so folks cannot simply move their units out. For these homeowners, the spike in rent isn't the only cost. That there are heavy emotional and psychological toll knowing that they will face financial hardship from steep rent hikes and have few recourses, especially for seniors who are past their earning years. Too many people who have no access to affordable housing end up living in tents, cars, or shelters. For them, affordability isn't a preference, it's a necessity. All residents in our community should feel safe and secure in their homes. The spike in the costs of rent, within our city's manufactured home parks is an unreasonable and unnecessary risk to some of our most vulnerable residents. It is a violation of their right to a secure home with freedom from the threat of predatory redevelopment and displacement. If we do nothing to address this, we will be failing to protect our city's affordable manufactured homes and their owners. We feel it is in the best interest of Attleboro residents that the city forms a rent control board for manufactured and or mobile home parks. We hope you will consider protecting our city's vulnerable residents by supporting this initiative written by the members of the Attleboro Council on Human Rights.
Can you get a copy of that?
Yeah.
Can we have this one?
Oh yeah, kind of. There you go.
Yes, of course.
Hello, good evening. My name is Ben Kudo. I'm a resident of Attleboro. I live at 189 Maple Street. And tonight I'm here to speak in favor of a rent control board on behalf of our seniors. And I know it applies to families as well, but my notes are specifically relating to seniors. When you think of Attleboro, what comes to mind? A great place to raise a family, excellent schools and teachers, outstanding police and fire. But what about for our seniors? What can we say for them? Is it a place that they feel safe, protected, and valued? When it's election time, candidates appeal to the seniors. We will do more to protect you. We'll protect you from tax increases. We'll invest in elderly services. We'll honor you for your inherent worth. But right now, our seniors are unprotected against predatory real estate investors looking to make a quick buck on vulnerable seniors who have no current protections when it comes to fair rent. When I show you these ink blots, what do you see? A human eye? A beetle? But when I show you this picture of seniors, do you see a lifetime of experience? Do you see military veterans who stormed the beaches? Nurses who saved lives? Do you see vulnerable individuals who deserve respect? Or do you see a quick buck? Do you see an investment opportunity? A chance to push them out and make a few dollars on a property grab? By all means, if you want to invest in our seniors, we welcome you to do so. But when you want to make a profit on the backs of our seniors, that's not okay. And that's what we're here to stop. Will we as a community take this opportunity to tell our seniors that we value them? Will we take this opportunity to show them, to prove to them that we are here to protect them? Let's protect our seniors by enacting fair rent, as we have the power to do, if we have the will. Thank you.
At this point, did everybody get the clipboard to sign their name if they wanted to?
I'll get it over there.
I just want to.
Yes, you can.
All right, thanks, Jeff.
Hi, my name's Faye Rollins, and I live at Sandcastle. And I just wanted to give you like the dollar number. Like after Medicare took out their cut, Medicare A, B, D, from my mom's check, she got a $1.05 raise. Rent went up $55. Can you please help us? I wanted you to understand the money.
Yes.
At this rate, we'll be out in 5 years or less.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's anybody else that would like to speak, you can come to the podium.
Hi, my name is June Kohler. I'm from Birchwood Village Mobile Home Park. My husband and I have been there for 32 and a half years. We just got our letter saying our rent was going up $20. We're not paying as much as the people from Sandcastle, but the other thing that I haven't heard that needs to be taken into consideration, we have paid off our mortgage, but we also have, I don't know if anybody, house insurance. Mobile home insurance is outrageous. We pay over $800 a year for mobile home insurance. Over the years, we tried to go somewhere cheaper, and we would get the letter a year later saying, sorry, we're no longer insuring mobile homes. So that our options are gone. We have one company. But in the 32 and a half years that we've lived there, when we first moved in, our rent was $150. Which, you know, like I said, our rent, we got the letter, it's 20, we're going up to $450. That's not bad, considering. But when you take into consideration, life happens. My husband, in 2012, suffered an aortic dissection. our lives changed forever. At 50 years old, being told he can never work again, and he worked 3 jobs. We've always lived paycheck to paycheck. And when we live in a family mobile home. This is a family mobile home park. We have 2 boys. They grew up there. But in a family mobile home park, that's all it is. They just allow kids. There's nothing else. They're not allowed to play in the streets. They're not allowed to play in other people's yards. Understandable. We have fields throughout there, just, little ones that we were always told over the years they can't play, but you'll see many vehicles parked in these spots. We were always told they couldn't play there because of gas lines. So, but to give you an example, my neighbor who lost her husband in 2013 just informed me she has to leave because she can no longer afford to be there. She is on a waiting list for senior housing for 3 years. But, this is, I've always, been very grateful for what we have, very grateful. But when your life changes, that's not taken into consideration anyways. But the rent keeps going up and up. And these places have rules that we have to follow. But through the whole time we've been there, they don't apply to everybody, just certain people. So we've struggled. If we had the ability, we would have gone. We've already left, but we don't have that ability. And I've been out of work because I cared for my mom until she passed. And I was so desperate for my parents to get into a mobile home like Sandcastles. I wanted them to go there just so that they'd be on one floor. So, but anyways, yes, if you can do anything, please, help all of us, but especially the seniors because they deserve it.
Thank you. My name is Diane Balut. I've been an Attleboro resident most of my life. I lived about 20 years in North Attleboro. Owned a home there, moved my home when the mall came in, moved my home to South Attleboro. 20 years ago, I moved into Sandcastle. In the first 19 years that I lived there, my rent went up less than $100. In the last 6 months, it's gone up $168. I'm going to be one of those people losing my home. I have a single income. Granted, it's a teacher's retirement, so it's better than most. But I'm at a point now when they have a meeting and the owner comes to the park to meet with all of us, supposedly in good faith, and he says, I'll do what I want. And we asked him, will you be consulting with our board? I might, but I'll do whatever I please. We need your help. In November, I went to Florida for a family funeral. While I was down there, I decided I would take a look at other legacy parks. 2. Neither one as nice as Sandcastle. Spoke to the elderly people in those parks. One park had been owned for 6 months. The rents had gone from $279 a month to $520 a month, and they had another increase coming. The other one, again, in the 200 range, had gone up in 9 months to $720 a month. Every other house had a for sale sign on it. In the 20 years I've lived here, we were considered that we had a lot of houses on the market, if we had 2 at any one time. Now we're apt to have 8. Now they want to sell the houses. So they buy them cheap, they put a little bit of money into renovation, and they sell them at top dollar. They don't care. Even the former owner is sorry he sold. please help us. Please help us get some stabilization to the rent. I was on the North Attleboro RTM for 18 years. I know that they have tried to go into North Attleboro and buy parks. I know that they have tried to go into Marlboro, and because of what we've gone through here, Marlboro has managed to stop them. We ask that you try to help us so that we don't all have to leave. Thank you. Question?
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Mary George. I'm a resident of Sandcastle. I've been there since 2001. My husband and I moved from Franklin down here because we wanted one floor and a nice community that was safe for the two of us. When I first moved in, I paid $240 a month for my maintenance fee. My husband passed away in 2011, leaving me short one income. Therefore, I had to refinance my mortgage because, of course, I couldn't pay it on my salary. So now I have 6 more years to pay, and my rent has gone up since April, $169 a month. Now, I work part-time at the senior center. Luckily for me, I have a little money, but I don't have enough to pay for my food every month because I can't afford to shell out an extra $170 every month, knowing that next year it's going to go up another $40 a month. For people that I don't know, they're not my family. The residents of Sandcastle are my family. I moved into a safe community where I knew my husband and I would spend the rest of our lives together, and if one of us passed, the other one would be encased in a community where somebody would look out for them and they wouldn't have to be alone. Now I'm worried about where's my next meal going to come from, and am I going to be able to live there to pay my next 6 years of my mortgage so I can live happily ever after. We need help. We are not getting any more money on our Social Securities. We're all older. We're not going to go get a full-time job to cover our expenses. We bought a home that's our home to live in, not to worry about, now I have to try to get into senior housing, give up my home, my privacy, to live in a glorified apartment because somebody from Las Vegas or from Arizona or from Florida took over my nice community and is now pricing me out. And in order for them to buy my property, they have first right of refusal. In other words, if I went to a place to sell it, they have the option of buying it, and they're going to buy it. I've got to pay the fee, and they're going to turn around and sell it for $200,000, $300,000, whatever they want, and some other poor person that's over 55 is going to come in. But they're going to come in knowing how much it costs. They're not going to come in knowing it's going to cost $200 every month when they're not making $200 every month. So I'm asking you guys to help us because we need to be protected. We need to know our home is our home. That's where we want to stay until we don't have a home anymore. We don't want to have to go die in another senior place. This is where our friends are. This is where our lives are. I've been there for 19 years. I don't want to give up my neighbors because I can't afford to. And I don't want to not have to buy food because I have to pay my condo fee. It's foolishness. My homeowner's insurance is $1,142 a year. That goes up. My car insurance goes up, but nothing goes up $170 a month for a home that I own the home. They're paying for my land, which I have to maintain. I have to cut the grass. I have to shovel my snow. They're not fixing that. They're not fixing the repairs that happen in my house that's now 25 years old, and yet they have no qualms about saying, well, you have 2 weeks to get the money up. If you can't get it, maybe you have to leave. They don't care. They don't care how long we've been there. They don't care if I moved in last year or if I moved in 20 years ago. What they care about is making their money, and we need to be protected. We're seniors. We've worked our whole lives to accomplish something, and now we're being penalized for being old and not having a job. It doesn't seem fair. So I ask you people to please be considerate and help us if you can. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. It seems like, yep, come on.
Hi, my name is Bill Bowles, 65 Norgate Road in Attleboro. I actually wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I was really touched by the points that many of the residents made. But there's one thing that I think the councilors should think about that hasn't been brought up tonight. Every one of us who owns a home in the city of Attleboro, back in 1980, benefited because of a law called Proposition 2.5. Overall, our taxes are limited by Proposition 2.5. For anyone who owns an apartment, that apartment is also under those limits of Proposition 2.5. So we have those limits. Even the property that the person at Sandcastle owns, that property is limited to the constraints of Proposition 2.5 as well. So the owner that is raising the rents, at least for the property, that owner is benefiting from the limiting fact of Proposition 2.5. So when I was thinking about this and listening to the testimony, what I think the folks that are looking for a rent control board are looking for sort of the mobile home parks version of Proposition 2.5, something that can keep the rents reasonable. And you can't really compare. People move to a mobile home park because they want to downsize, and that's what they can afford. So a $200 increase to someone at Sandcastle may be just as detrimental to a $500 increase to someone who has a bigger home. So I think in considering whether we ought to have a rent control board for the mobile home parks, I would just think of it as their version of Prop 2.5. If you look at the costs that the owners are going to pass on, they're the same costs that we incur here: the cost of water, the cost of sewer, the cost of the increased taxes on the land they occupy. So no one is saying that the owners should not be able to increase rents, because that's why they bought the property as an investment, as Councilor DeSimone was talking about. But I think all we're really looking for is a sense of fairness. And it seems like, just in listening to some of the stories of how much the rents have increased on a percentage basis, think of our own home. How would we feel if we were, if our taxes increased 50%? That would be a problem, and it's a problem for them. Thank you.
Thank you. I really want to, we want to thank everybody for coming out. And just as a reminder, this is the third council meeting this week. We had one Tuesday, there was a meeting last night, and this is the third meeting. Some of the councilors I mentioned were not able to make it, but they will definitely be getting all the information. So thank you again for coming. Is there any comments?
Where do you foresee it going from here, Diana?
So thank you for the question. So I had mentioned earlier that Councilor Reynolds and myself are working on a draft of a resolution. This would then go to the city solicitor, but with a quick hopefully a quick turnaround, and then we would be presenting it to the full council for a vote, and then it would be going to the state, Representative Hawkins.
Thank you.
Any other comments, or should I close? Okay, I'll call for an adjournment.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned at 8:42.
Yeah, you did really well.